it's manifestly self-discrediting and sad. I mean, it's sad. There's something deeply, honestly, inhumane about this guy getting all this attention by people that are, once the message is out there millions of times, it becomes a thing now that everyone's going to be discussing. And people are taking advantage, I think, of what is just a mental health break from reality that this guy, that Kanye is having.
Kanye West, we teased this yesterday because it was happening during the afternoon while we were on the air. He went on with Alex Jones wearing a black ski cap of some sort that covered his entire face, Kanye did.
Have you ever had Alex Jones come after you, by the way?
No, not that I know of. Has he come after you?
Oh, yeah.
For what?
It's like Buck Sexton, some kind of CIA plan to take over conservative media. Can't trust him. Look at that hair. I'm serious. There's a whole thing. And then I had
when was
Alex
this? How
Jones
long
people.
ago?
Oh, I don't know, like 7 years ago or something. It's fun. Good times. Alex Jones.
No, to my knowledge, I've never met Alex Jones. I've never heard. I don't think he's ever.
Yeah. I mean, it's just
just
quite a phenomenon because his followers, when they come after you, you honestly just want to ask a lot of them, are you okay? Is everything okay?
He just filed for bankruptcy today. So he has been bankrupted based on what he said about the Sandy Hook shooting back in Connecticut, whatever that was, like 10 years ago now.
Wasn't it a billion dollar defamation?
Over $1 billion, I think, in verdicts against him. Now, I don't believe those are permissible under Texas law, because there's a limit to punitive damages, I believe, and I'm not an expert on damages in Texas law, so I think a lot of that will get struck down in appeal. But he's been embroiled in litigation for so long at this point that he effectively has to declare bankruptcy. So we'll see what ends up happening with those companies and to his assets and everything else. And I don't necessarily love the concept of you can bankrupt someone based on entire opinions, because it's the slippery slope in some way, because while I think he was wrong in virtually everything that he said about Sandy Hook, we got this law that was passed. We talked a little bit about this, Buck, in California, that would limit, for instance, what physicians are able to say about medical related issues over COVID. And I think the idea of restricting speech in general just makes me nervous in terms of what the precedents that we're setting could be.
We've really gone as a society very far from what free speech is supposed to mean. This is something that I think even on the right now, there's this, you can't say something that's like really mean or really false. That's actually not the free speech principle that was enshrined both in the Constitution and upheld many times by the Supreme Court. As we know, really ugly, really horrible speech. If speech that is not hated, now there are limitations, and we can discuss those limitations, right? But if speech as a general matter that is not, if speech that is hated is not protected, what is the purpose of free speech protection? You have to get it. I mean, remember the ACLU, which is now just a left-wing advocacy group, used to be an organization that we obviously think about the Nazis marching in Skokie, Illinois. That's probably the most famous free speech case that exists in the Supreme Court. What could be more horrible than Nazis marching, specifically because there were a lot of Holocaust survivors in Skokie, Illinois?
That's right.
A group of them there. Supreme Court said, look, it's disgusting, it's disgraceful, of course, and it is. But that once you start entering these value judgments of, I really dislike the things you say so much, now that's on the government side. What does Twitter free speech mean, right? The government saying you can't do something is one thing, and the government has blurred those lines between public and private with Twitter and other platforms over COVID. What does free speech really mean on Twitter? That's what we're figuring out right now.
In particular, when it's high intensity, high passion, uncertain details. And I think COVID is a perfect example of that, because the way that Twitter was implementing their policies, they were banning people for saying things that ended up being true. And with that in mind, Alex Jones had Kanye West on, and Kanye West has just really, it's unfortunate, He's
having a mental breakdown.
He's having a mental breakdown. It's a good way of putting it. Here's what he had to say.
I see good things about Hitler also. I love everyone, and Jewish people are not going to tell me you can love, us, and you can love what we're doing to you with the contracts, and you can love what we're pushing with the pornography. But this guy that invented highways, invented the very microphone that I use as a musician, you can't say out loud that this person ever did anything good, and I'm done with that. I'm done with the classifications. Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table. Especially Hitler.
Especially Hitler. When you find yourself, Buck, in a situation where you are saying, Hitler, when you really examine the full historical record, got a bad rap, which is effectively what Kanye West is saying, you really kind of have lost the plot points, and it's just mentally ill.
Look, it's manifestly self-discrediting and sad. I mean, it's sad. There's something deeply honestly inhumane about this guy getting all this attention by people that are once the message is out there millions of times, it becomes a thing now that everyone's going to be discussing, and people are taking advantage, I think, of what is just a mental health break from reality that this guy that Kanye is having, and I think though it raises interesting questions because he was kicked off of Twitter. So Kanye has been kicked off of Twitter, right?
I think he's suspended technically, not banned, right? So he's, and I don't know what he has to do. Well, I think when you're suspended, you could theoretically come back, right?
But my understanding was everybody, like all the people that lost their accounts, were suspended.
Well, that's interesting. I think that Musk would be likely to bring back Kanye at some point. He's trying to allow everybody to be on the site, whereas I don't think if Elon Musk hadn't bought Twitter, I don't know that Trump ever comes back.
Here's my point. I think when you're talking about the government, if you believe in free speech, you have to be effectively an absolutist on free speech. Because if the government can say, you can't say this because we think it's really ugly or really untrue, well, they can do that on a whole range of issues. For Twitter it's a true private company, right? I mean, it's not even publicly traded anymore. It's Elon's company. It is a private company. It can do what it wants. How far does the free speech principle, as opposed to constitutional protection, extend in the context of Twitter? We'll see, because it started out, who was the first guy to effectively get de-interneted, if you will, or depersoned from the internet? The first one that I remember was Alex Jones, actually.
Yeah.
YouTube, Google, Facebook, they got them all off. And that was because the guy says crazy things. In the case of Sandy Hook, said just viciously inhuman things, but
and untrue things, which is why he's gotten hit by the.
But that's what I mean. But then it turned into, you say masks don't work, boom, you're done too.
That's right.
Right. So we're basically going to have to gear up for this. Is going to be an ongoing fight. This is going to be an ongoing conversation about the limits of the conversation, even in a platform like Twitter that's supposed to be about free speech. And that's also with the backdrop of right now, we're finding out that the government clearly, the Biden administration clearly violated constitutional protections of free speech by collaborating with the big tech platforms to silence disfavored views.
Essentially what they did was deputize the big tech companies to do things that constitutionally they would have been unable to do. And I wanted to hit you with this stat too. Alex Berenson tweeted out, New York Times has a huge story right now up. Hate speech's rise on Twitter is unprecedented, researchers find. And then when he dove into the numbers and said, okay, there are 4,000 anti-gay slurs happening every day on Twitter. That sounds like a lot, right? To somebody who doesn't pay a lot of attention to large numbers. But Twitter has 500 million tweets a day. So after this unprecedented rise, anti-gay slurs account for 1 in every 125,000 tweets. Now, you can say, hey, they shouldn't exist, but putting into context how rare truly hate speech is, even on Twitter at this moment. And then I think the next step you have to ask is, and you're kind of getting at this question, Buck, too, and this is one that society has to grapple with, in order to have truly free speech, you have to be willing to accept some things that are offensive in nature, or you can't have the free speech at all. So you can't just say, and then you get into what is offensive, right? Which is the ultimately challenging line to try to draw. And that in and of itself is almost impossible to hew to a consistent standard. There
are plenty of people, and in fact, they run the Democrat Party, who will say, yes, Kanye has been kicked off or whatever, suspended, for the time being, and definitely on Twitter for saying just heinous, anti-Semitic, disgusting stuff. You know what else is heinous and disgusting? Calling Rachel Levine a man. That's heinous and disgusting. They expand. They start with the subjective assessment, and they will keep. I'm just saying, we can even, you can agree with a subjective assessment that what Kanye said just does cross the line, but understand that the people that want to suppress a lot more speech than that, they start there, they start at the worst, and then they keep adding to it, and just give it time. They'll be saying, oh, you're killing grandma by saying you shouldn't have to mandate 2 masks while you walk around a grocery store. This is what happened.
Concerned with policing speech don't believe that our radio show should exist. And they don't believe that you and I should be able to tweet the things that we tweet every single day. That's where this leads. That's clearly their goal.
Yes, that's true. So just gear up for it's going to be an ongoing fight, even at Twitter and just in general in our society, for what are the limits of free speech.